Hello, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for being here on the last day of Philippine Startup Week 2020. I'm Eunice Braga, the External Relations Manager of IdeaSpace, and I'll be your host for this morning. So, welcome to the event that we're organizing with PLDT InnoLab called Creating Win-Win Partnerships: How Big Business and Startups Can Work Together. So, this event will focus on the potential opportunities for collaboration between startups, corporations, and even government agencies to deliver greater value to their stakeholders. We have an exciting lineup of guests for this morning, and we are looking forward to sharing their insights, their ideas, and their learnings with everyone. So to kick things off, we'd like to call on the president of IdeaSpace Foundation, Mr. Butch Maley.
I wake up each morning, and for a moment, I think that the past 9 months have been a long nightmare, or maybe a bad zombie movie. Then I see a mask next to me, and I realize that we are still in the middle of a global pandemic. COVID 19 has dominated our lives. It determines how we do business, how we are educated, how we socialize, and how we fall in love. One of its biggest impacts has been to accelerate the shift to a digital way of working, buying, learning, and consuming entertainment. The pandemic has devastated certain industries while giving birth to new ones. Companies have had to pivot to new ways of doing business in order to survive. Startups have an important role to play in this new digital world. They enable people to get their vegetables directly from farmers. They allow us to order our groceries without ever stepping foot inside a supermarket. They give teachers a tool to implement online learning. Today's session helps us understand that new world. For many, it is a life altering adjustment. We need to work together if we are going to make it through this COVID night, not to mention all the typhoons that have struck us. Government, big corporations, and startups can leverage on each other's strengths by using our resources and innovation to carry us through to a new day. I'd like to thank PLDT InnoLab for co-hosting this session. I'd like to thank as well UNICEF, ING Bank, the Department of Agriculture, as well as Mel Nava of One Export, Daniel Whitford of Pioneera, John Sharp, and many others who will be speaking later today. I also want to thank the IdeaSpace staff for their hard work in making this event a reality. Robert Kennedy once said that the future does not belong to those who are content with today, apathetic toward common problems and their fellow man alike, timid and fearful in the face of bold projects and new ideas. Rather, it will belong to those who can blend passion, reason, and courage in a personal commitment to their ideals. Let us commit ourselves today to that digital future with all of its complexities and opportunities, with all of its risks and rewards. Thank you for being part of this event.
All right. Thank you, Butch, for the wonderful opening remarks. So, this is a 3-hour program, and we have two distinct blocks for this event. So, the first block will focus on demystifying corporate startup partnerships, while the second block will focus on the present and future of collaborations for startups. Our first speaker this morning is Mel Nava, who is the co founder and CEO of One Export, an online end to end platform helping small and medium businesses across Southeast Asia export. Founded in the Philippines in 2016, One Export helps small and medium businesses with various country requirements, such as labeling and documentation, so that they could export to their desired countries without losing focus from their core business. One Export also connects small and medium businesses to distributors worldwide, assuring global purchasers of a roster of export compliant suppliers. So please welcome our first speaker for this morning, Ms. Mel Nava. Hi, Mel. Good morning, and thank you for joining us in this event. So, we really wanted to get your perspective on what's it been like to work with both corporations and small and medium enterprises alike. So, we also wanted to ask you a couple of questions that some of the startup founders here might be interested, given your experience. So, first things first, since we did mention in the intro that you've been working with SMEs, what's your process for working with them? Like, how are you working with SMEs currently?
Okay, so initially when we started One Export, we really had a hand-holding type of operations for micro, small, and medium enterprises. We built our business around small and medium enterprises, and we initially started off as a consulting company because we wanted to really understand what small and medium enterprises needed in terms of pain points, in terms of solutions, in terms of price points, what are they willing to pay. So we initially started with that, and we learned so much from that experience that in 2018, when we joined the IdeaSpace program, we actually decided to streamline our operations and create a tech platform for small and medium enterprises. So we used the learnings from our previous years to really build a platform for small and medium enterprises. And in December 2019, when we got enough money from our revenues, we launched our platform. In the pandemic, when the pandemic hit, we are actually now onboarding a lot of micro, small, and medium enterprises. We are talking about at least 10 a week because a lot of these small and medium businesses want to export, but they don't know what the process is. They don't know how to start. They don't want to also be in a position where they can be taken advantage of by anyone because the pandemic has also brought a lot of these threats on the surface. And so we really work with them. But now, since our processes are more streamlined, we actually ask them to register on our platform, and then we go through a simple onboarding process with them, and then eventually they're able to export depending on the target markets that they want. So that's sort of how we started with micro, small, and medium enterprises from a very manual hand-holding perspective. Now, I'd like to say that a lot of small and medium enterprises are forced to go online. And so a lot of them are now in our platform, and a lot of them now are being exported because of what we are doing and the initiatives that we are working on with them. So, yes.
So you also work with the distributor side to make sure that there is a flow of goods and that the quality is maintained throughout. There's definitely a lot of infrastructure that goes into building this kind of platform. From your initial days of like hand holding and working more closely with the SMEs, how did you evolve to open up or create opportunities to work with corporations?
Okay, so some of the corporations we work with are, for example, Seafood City in the United States, Almira in Qatar. We work with different retailers. We work with different distributors in Australia. So these are large corporations that can purchase huge products, right? So how we've worked with these corporations, these big corporations are actually after results. So they want products that get there fast, that get there on time. They want that the products are export ready, meaning they won't have a problem when they go through customs. So everything is compliant in terms of market standards, right? So it's a very straightforward transaction. But working with micro, small, and medium enterprises, it's important to also understand their capacity to produce, the lead times that they are working with, the capital that they need to be able to produce the goods to export. And so what we've done is really make sure that, with data, with AI, with the tech, and making the process automation more seamless, right? We make sure that we're able to deliver as fast as we can. So industry standard, it would normally take 90 days to be able for a micro, small, or medium enterprise to be able to deliver their goods to the warehouse. So we've been able to cut that time to 21 days. So if you want to export anything from the Philippines, we can get it out of the port of Manila in as fast as 2 weeks, or to 21 days. And then depending on the shipping time, we're able to deliver in maybe another 20 more days because of the shipping requirements, right? So why is this important? We were mostly exporting food before this pandemic happened, and so when the pandemic hit, food was an essential product and was considered to be part of the essential industry. When the pandemic happened, most people were cooking from their houses, so they needed food to be immediately delivered, or else they would lose sale. So by reducing the time and cost to export, we were able to deliver more Filipino products. We were able to grow our sales, but also grow the food industry because we were able to deliver products on time, right? So I guess just putting two and two together, putting small and medium enterprises and large corporations together, being able to understand what the current problems are and being able to address them through one export was a really challenging experience for us, but it was a challenging experience for us, but it was also something that we were able to learn from through experimentation, which we learned through the IdeaSpace program, and really talking to your customers every time. We were able to really come up with a solution that will reduce the time and cost to export and make sure that the products are export ready. So there.
So, in the course of building one export to what it is today, you've had to work with private sector, government, and on the private sector side, definitely businesses of different sizes. How did you prepare the organization to work with all of these different organizations, different levels of complexity? How did you do it?
I think the first industry that was really hard to tackle was the small and medium enterprise. So we first solved their problems above anybody else, right? Because the small and medium enterprises had so many problems, had so many different problems, but people looked at them as small. If you're not, we realize that if we don't solve their problems, it'll be a bottleneck for us eventually. So we spent our first 2 years really developing small and medium enterprises. So from making their products compliant, or telling them, okay, if you want to be able to export this much to a particular retailer, you need to have production capacity. So a lot of it was really developing the small and medium enterprises in the first 2 years of our business. When they talk to wholesalers, retailers, and distributors abroad, it was easy to sell their products. So the distributors or the purchasers abroad will not have to think twice. They will just purchase and buy the products, and we can ship out immediately. So that was the first part when we first initially worked with them. The second part of how we developed the business was to talk to government and private sector stakeholders, right? These private stakeholders, sector stakeholders, private businesses, and government want to also make sure that when these businesses become developed, they are part of that process. They are part of that growth, right? We realized small and medium enterprises. So we realized that these small and medium enterprises are very loyal when they grow. So of course, government and private businesses want to be a part of that. And so what have we been doing to make sure that the experience becomes worthwhile? We make sure that the services, for example, we are partnered with a bank, we are partnered with a telecommunications company like PLDT. We make sure that these businesses have offerings that are relevant to our SMEs. So, for example, for the bank, we make sure that they have they offer loans that are cheap and that small and medium enterprises can use when they start to do export, right? For PLDT, we also make sure that the infrastructure for doing export, like Wi-Fi, is accessible when SMEs decide to start exporting, right? So that's the second part of the way that we develop. And then of course the last part would be, how do we sell the products of micro, small, and medium enterprises? And this is where we really make sure that the network and the Filipino diaspora is well poised for. So the last part is really to make sure, how do we sell the products of micro, small, and medium enterprises abroad? And this is where network effects and the Filipino diaspora plays a big role. When we sell to, let me give an example. When the pandemic hit, you had a surge of ube cheese pandesal that was very popular among the Filipinos who were quarantined, right? So they would buy from their neighbors and they would buy from their friends on Instagram, or things that are popular on Instagram in general, right? What we felt was we should take advantage of this trend. So when the pandemic hit, and we wanted to be able to sell to big wholesalers and retailers, we also told them of the trends that they should look out for. So, for example, ube being one, we made sure that our wholesalers and distributors were stocked with ube products. So when the trend hit 2 months after, all of our distributors and wholesalers had the stock of products. So that was sort of how we use data and in terms of building demand. How did we sell it to Filipino immigrants abroad? During the pandemic, we launched a new model called Caravan, where we took advantage of the Filipino diaspora, and we made sure that Filipino immigrants who wanted to start an importing business can do so, even without having to go to the Philippines because of the pandemic travel restrictions. So when we launched Caravan, we took advantage of the interests of Filipino immigrants. So some of them wanted to start a snack business, or some of them wanted to start an accessory business or a furniture business, taking advantage of the trends that was happening in the United States. So for example, because in the US, most people were staying at home, people needed better furniture, or people needed better accessories to wear in their Zoom events. So those were things that we took advantage of, and we onboarded all of these suppliers. And instead of shipping in a container which we would ship to big wholesalers and retailers, we ship via loose cargo, allowing us to reduce the cost of shipping and allowing overseas Filipino immigrants to really sell at a more at a more sorry, to really sell at a competitive price versus their competitors in an Amazon or a Shopify website. So those were things that we took advantage of during the pandemic, and allowing, with this three-pronged strategy for developing small and medium businesses and helping them connect to huge retailers and wholesalers, as well as smaller resellers abroad, we were really able to create an ecosystem that worked. And how can I say that it was a success? The How can I say that this initiative was a success? The sales were, of course, grew for us, but when the products were at the warehouses of our resellers or distributors, right after it got there, they ordered immediately for us. Or sometimes when the products were shipped out, we already got an order. So this whole play on data, on technology, on AI, on developing SMEs from the grassroots level really played well during the pandemic, because of how we were able to execute all of these revenue and business models.
That's been an exciting couple of months for you, Mel, and I'm really just in awe of the work that you've been able to do these past few months. So before we wrap up your segment for this event, is there any piece of advice that you'd like to give to startup founders who are maybe looking to work with SMEs, corporations, or build similar platforms that really require an entire ecosystem?
Well, for me, the first would be to really, like, as you've mentioned, it's really important to work with small and medium enterprises, especially at this time. This time is critical because 70% of them are expected to close down if they do not hit the sales, right? So the first thing is let's work with the small and medium enterprises because this is the core of Filipino businesses. 98% of our businesses are micro, small, and medium enterprises, and we need them to survive. Otherwise, we could lose a significant part of the ecosystem. A lot of jobs are already being lost at this time, and a lot of people are not making money. A lot of the consumption is down specifically because of this. Second is, given that we need to work with micro, small, and medium businesses, what are the critical things that they need? They need sales. So, as startups, what are the things that we can do to increase the sales of micro, small, and medium enterprises? Of course, we have e-commerce. We have Lazada, we have Shopee, we have the local e-commerce. We can make new e-commerce businesses and sell their products. But that's not enough. We need to be able to help them grow, not just in the Philippines, but abroad. We also need to be able to help them take advantage of different opportunities, right? And so if you are a startup and you are in a chance where you can pivot in this pandemic, I suggest you really pivot in a way that will help micro, small, and medium enterprises.
All right. So thank you, Mel. For those of you watching, there will be a live Q&A towards the end of the event, which Mel is going to be a part of. So if you have any questions for her, make sure that put it up in the chat. We'll make sure to take note of it and line it up for the end of the event. So thank you, Mel, and we'll see you back later for the live Q&A. So that was Mel Nava of One Export. Our next speaker is from the corporate side, Mr. Jojo Hendrano. Jojo is currently the first vice president at PLDT and heads the core business solutions group at PLDT Enterprise, serving both the MSME and large enterprise segments. His group covers product management, product development, pre-sales engineering, analytics, and market research. Prior to joining PLDT, he was vice president of IT at the Goldman Sachs Group in New York, in the USA. He also held technical sales positions at Verizon Business and Cisco Systems. Jojo obtained his bachelor's degree in electronics and communications engineering from De La Salle University and his master's degree in electrical engineering, major in telecommunications and networking from the University of Pennsylvania. Here to talk to us about the corporate's perspective on working with startups and what partnership or collaboration opportunities are available between startups and corporates. Let's all welcome Mr. Jojo Hendrano.
So, a very pleasant day to all of the participants for this year's Philippine Startup Week. And we hope that you will get a lot of insights, especially as to how to cope and meet the demands of this age. My name is Jojo Hendrano, and I currently head products and marketing for PLDT Enterprise. And I still consider myself a geek to this day and used to code and actually compete a long time ago, though I'll be dating myself on BASIC, Pascal, C, ML, and machine language. I'm also huge fans of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. So what I'd like to quickly talk about today is to enlighten you on what we believe is the new business landscape, mainly from the eyes of a telco services provider. There's so many opportunities out there, and such a large demand for transformation solutions, and it is important that we work together to address these. So please allow me to start off with sharing with you our overall vision in PLDT Enterprise, which is the B2B arm of the PLDT Group. We want to make a positive impact on every single business, no matter the size or location. And as we are also a global business. And impact for us has been one of the most commonly used words this year. And as we've all said, that nothing would have prepared us for this pandemic. And the moving forward theme is business resilience so that we can handle things better now and for the future. And impact, my friends, needs to be planned and felt, not just a point of impact that has to be sustained. While it seems that bad news never seems to be ending. We'd like to note our observations and certain trends for impact, where our efforts will be focused on moving forward. So each business needs to up their pace on their digital transformation initiatives. Reinvention is no longer a choice, but a necessity. Connectivity and resilience also go hand in hand. And this demand to transform and connect is driving more and more enterprises in getting data center needs or going to the cloud. And we also see a lot of activity from the hyperscalers, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Alibaba, etc. And that means there's just so much activity going on in enterprises, more small, medium, or large, trying to go on to their transformation initiatives. But while transforming, companies also need to focus on their core business. So they need a trusted partner to provide managed end-to-end services. It's beyond the pure technology play at this point, but around supportability and sustainability. And we see this across a multitude of industries. So each industry has their own transformation journey to e-industries, and here are some notable examples. So we see banks that saw a huge demand on online and mobile, and they're focusing on how to provide the best possible user experience and security. BPO companies that had to shift majority of their workflows to work from home. E-learning and e-health who have been top of mind as industries that simply have to continue to serve, right? And I won't go through the rest, but each one is important uh, by their own rights, and it's paramount to be in dialogue, in partnership, and in co-development with these industries, as it's not simply presenting technology, but transforming how they work by understanding how their business works, and then positioning and sometimes building technology fit for their needs. So we can group these drivers into or needs into three common areas, which is where we think bulk of the demand will be on, and where we think a lot of technology needs will be coming. So the first one is on workplace transformation. So how can employees safely and securely continue working and collaborating? A lot has been talked about on burnout. So because of the heightened pace of online work, there's no need to go between floors, between offices. It's just so much of a faster pace that it's important to factor in the human element of collaboration. And maybe presenting tools to remind people to work and manage their teams better will be important. There's a feature I use a lot in Microsoft Teams that suggests what's the best time to block certain hours of the day for quiet time so that I can catch up on things that I need to do at work or at home. So the next major area is on CX journey transformation. And it's simply put, how can companies continue to serve their clients better, either physically or online? And the last is in infrastructure transformation. How can companies continue to serve fluctuating and heightened customer demand, recover from outages, keep their infrastructure secure, and protect the personal data of their customers and employees? There is so much to do, and no single entity can do this alone. So it is important that we all collaborate to meet the new market demands. We will continue to build on our fixed and wireless infrastructure, but it is important to go beyond and be a curator of digital services. So we hope that a lot of these curated services, including the services of, say, one export, for example, um, be it for small, medium, or large enterprises, will come from the startup community as well. So the pandemic has also heightened the need for IoT solutions. It's no longer hype, and those that used these solutions during the pandemic definitely had an edge, and demand will continue to increase. And we believe that this will be the fastest growth area within PLDT Enterprise, we believe. And we also have 10 data centers nationwide, and will continue to build and expand. And it is a definitive sign of enterprises and hyperscalers continuing to expand as well. As previously mentioned, this opens the avenue to go beyond platforms and into managed services, where we want to continue and build expertise in critical technology disciplines. As we collaborate with the startup community, just bear in mind one entity which is our focal point for this, and that is PLDT InnoLab. And it's created to serve as the central point of innovation for programs and activities within PLDT Enterprise. So here we bring in customers to collaborate, to co-create, and to map out the future together. And as part of that, we connect companies, business units with external innovations in the startups and in the academic world. So we want InnoLab to be a maker space where employees can prototype all sorts of new concepts as well. And InnoLab plays a key part in the innovation within the PLDT group. Given the magnitude of the needs and the demands of the market, we have to be on the lookout for solutions outside our usual large IT partnerships. We need to interact more openly with startups, entrepreneurs, accelerators, academic researchers, and even nonprofits and government agencies. And we will continue to build on and evolve our part in the startup ecosystem. So expect us to be a key fixture in hackathons, business matching events, conferences, and mentoring events. And the learnings from such events are important for us to help foster an inclusive innovation mindset within the PLDT group of companies. So the pandemic actually derailed some of these efforts, but we are working hard to think of ways to engage digitally to continue on with the efforts of fostering more innovation. So by crowdsourcing ideas, having employees innovate beyond their roles, and rewarding notable achievements as well. And please allow me to show some notable examples in initiatives that InnoLab has been doing. So we've been working with the likes of Senti, Timefree, Taxumo, One Export, and many others to expand their business reach and echo back valuable business feedback from our enterprise customers. This is just the start, and we want to do a lot here, especially in the areas of 5G, IoT, and solutions for small businesses. We'll also continue to scale our partnerships and build ecosystems, and events such as this will play an important part with that as well. So let's please continue to get the co-innovation going. So PLDT and InnoLab are here for you. So we have our own view of the market, but we value what you see as well, and we should uncover the needs of this market together. For every need, there is a solution. For every need, there is a solution. For every solution, there's likely already a startup that's working on something, and we need to find them and nurture them. So the better the scoping, the better the implementation and integration into the overall solution ecosystem. And please just allow me to end that by stressing that we cannot innovate in a vacuum. So we need this community and this ecosystem to thrive. So together we aim to make a positive impact on every single business, on every single Filipino. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Jojo, for that wonderful presentation. So, as with Mel, you will be able to ask your questions to Sir Jojo. He will be participating in a fireside chat later on for this event. Also, please don't forget to like, comment using the hashtag PSW 2020 or PHSW 2020, so we can keep track of the different discussions, comments, questions that are related to this event. Also, we also just wanted to share that PLDT InnoLab will be running a raffle later on for this event. So please make sure that your contact details are ready, and we'll definitely share with you a bit of the mechanics for that towards the end of the event. So our next speaker is also a startup founder, this time from outside of the Philippines. Danielle Owen Whitford is the founder and CEO of Pioneera. Pioneer leverages on natural language matching, machine learning, and artificial intelligence to identify stress early before it becomes a problem. Prevention is better than cure, so this non-invasive tool enables early identification and intervention to help lower stress levels faster. This also improves business performance by reducing absenteeism and improving productivity, and will also help prevent some of the devastating and long term consequences of workplace stress on individuals. Consequences such as burnout, exhaustion, and other physical and mental health issues. To learn more about what it's been like building Pioneera, working on an idea that focuses on workplace tech, and figuring out partnerships both within Australia and outside of the country, we'd like to call on our next speaker, Miss Daniel Owen Whitford.
Hi, Eunice. Hi, everybody. Great to be here.
Hi. So, Daniel, I guess we did introduce Pioneer a little bit, but we wanted to learn more about what you're currently working on and what is this problem that you're really trying to solve and what makes it urgent.
Sure. Well, Eunice, my background actually is large organisations. So I worked for big companies in the Asia Pacific for nearly 20 years, and I loved what I did. I ran retail networks and call centres and large-scale transformation, but I burnt out myself in 2016. And when I look back, I realised the warning signs were there, but I didn't see them and I didn't do anything about them, and neither did my workplace. So I left my job and I decided to use that experience to help prevent this situation happening in others. So in 2018, I joined a technology incubator in Sydney, here in Sydney where I am, called She Starts, run by Blue Chili. And what they taught me to do is actually how to build a startup. So we've now built an AI platform that uses language and behavior to understand the early warning signs of stress and burnout. And when we see those early warning signs, we send micro nudges to people and to leaders to help manage stress and reduce stress before it becomes burnout. We've been working now for a couple of years. We've got a big corporate customer. We've got some small business customers as well. And we're really trying to tackle that issue and help people see that there's a way. We don't have to work and be super stressed and be super crazy, and we don't have to feel like our worlds are falling apart. There is a way to be successful whilst managing your stress. So that's what we've been working on.
So it seems to be not only tackling a very critical issue. I can actually relate to your story. Prior to joining IdeaSpace, I was actually recovering from burnout myself. So I can't underline how important it is to really address this problem. So you're in a space of workplace tech, I guess, is the closest category that we can put it in. What has that journey been like, introducing this startup to both larger corporations and smaller businesses alike?
Yeah, look, it's been really interesting because what we're helping people, but we're also helping organizations. So we do get pigeonholed in a couple of different places. Some people call us HR tech, some people call us productivity tech, some people call us enterprise tech, some people call us wellness tech, and sort of tech, because we're helping mental health. Stress is one of the key inputs to the mental health issues we have in workplaces today. So we're pigeonholed in a couple of different areas. It's been an interesting journey with enterprises because enterprises have existing tools that they use to help understand what's happening with people. So they use surveys or they rely on managers to understand what's going on with people. And then they rely those leaders to be able to help people on the spot. And that's asking a lot from our leaders because we're not mental health professionals. So organizations have, and as much as we try, and we've seen really great, but we're not mental health professionals. So organizations understand that this is becoming a problem, particularly with COVID. We've seen the need for mental health because we're all working from home. No one knows what's happening when you're at home. So we want to be able to help our people, and our product gives you a sense of what's happening with the team. So we've definitely got a lot of interest from organizations. They're now taking that next step into the leap. And really it's about how do we manage the risk for them? How do we de-risk it so it's not such a big thing for organizations to do? So that's what we work with in terms of enterprise customers. For small businesses really care about their people and they care about their team. They have a significant lack of resources. So most small business owners have small teams and they're doing everything themselves. So they have a different sort of stress and they have lack of resources to help them do that. So what we can do for small businesses, we're like an extra resource in their team at a fraction of the cost. And we help them get a bit of peace of mind so they can continue to focus on running their business. But it's been quite interesting because we're an emerging technology. There's not many people like us on the market that does real-time analysis of data as well as the real-time AI interventions. So because of that, we're spending a lot of time educating people and helping them understand, actually, if you do this and this is the value that you get at the end of the day.
And I think that ties into my next question, which is, how have you been working to secure trust from leaders, businesses who might not be as familiar with this particular application of AI?
Yeah, look, it's so important. It really is important because we're talking about people. So trust is critical. So we've done a couple of things. So we are very transparent with the product, how the product works, why we do what we do, and we talk about that all the time. Like, we're very consistent. So that's the first thing. The second thing, we've built the product to be transparent, but also to be confidential. So the bot is called Indy, and the way Indy works is it integrates into communication systems and collaboration systems for organization. It works like a spell checker. So what we've done is we've made sure that individuals' data is kept safe and private only to that individual. No one else can access their personal data, and data that's provided and information to leaders in the organization is de-anonymized and it's aggregated. So we're protecting the individual from the start, and people love that. So when we go and work with a company, we straight away, we show them what the team data looks like, and we show them straight away that no individual can be targeted and identified, because users said to us, well, I don't really want my manager to know that I'm stressed because I might be picked on. So we've taken that away immediately. The bot is also transparent. So as soon as she joins a chat system, a collaboration system, an email. She announces herself. It says, it says, "Hi, I'm Indy, and this is what I'm here to do. I'm here to help you create great workplaces," or whatever it is that the company wants us to say. So we're transparent, but we also have built privacy and security into every layer of the product. So we're in Google Cloud, we're fully encrypted, the data is encrypted at rest, encrypted at transit. We make sure that we build business rules in to protect the personal information of the employees of the companies that we deal with, also the customers of the companies that we deal with. So one of our clients here is a big bank. For example, what we do is we make sure that if we see any number that's between 7 and 16 digits, we don't touch it because it could be a customer's credit card. So we build those things into the system, and we make sure we're very transparent with our customers. Also, we make sure that we use AI ethically. So we don't build a black box that spits out something that people don't understand. I take a lot of time in explaining to customers, these are the inputs, this is what we look for, these are the data points, this is roughly what it's going to show us, so they can see that input equals output, and they have a sense of comfort that we're actually showing them what's happening in real life.
We're also actually speaking with one of your clients later on in this session, Nathan. His team is based in the Philippines. Have you seen any cultural differences when it comes to privacy and working with a solution like this?
So we've seen, not in terms of cultural differences for privacy, everyone wants privacy. So that kind of is standard across the board. Where we have seen some cultural differences is how people apply the tool. So, some countries spend a lot of time talking to their people, helping their people understand it, bringing them on the journey. Some other countries just go, no, we're going to do this, and they implement it. So there's different ways that they engage people, also for different reasons. Some countries are very focused on compliance and operations, and this helps them actually meet their compliance obligations. Other countries do it because they want to manage risk. So in, for example, in the States, they want to make sure that they're de-risking it. They're not making mistakes which are causing the company a lot of money. In Australia, we have a legal responsibility to look after our people, to protect our employees. So there's a health and safety component to that as well. So it's different. Countries want different things. In the Philippines, because of such a wonderful industry that you have servicing the whole world, very much focused on productivity. How do we support productivity? But also, how do we treat people as people whilst helping them be productive?
I hope everyone who's tuned into the session is taking notes, because it's definitely such a wonderful insight into how that application varies and how we have to account for not just cultural differences, but also regulations and how that can potentially motivate customers. So thank you so much for that input. I guess my other question is, and you touched on this earlier when you were introducing yourself. How does your corporate experience help you now that you're building this startup?
Look, it's been so important, I must say, because it's a couple of things. So I speak the corporate lingo. Sorry, that's very Australian. I just did a very Australian lingo. So I speak the corporate language. So I understand the acronyms. I understand some of the things that are important in corporates. I understand the processes, because sometimes big companies, let's face it, there can be a lot of steps. There's a lot of decision makers.
Yes.
Sometimes yeah. And it can be really frustrating, if you're trying to navigate that system. Because I've been part of that system, I understand it, so I can get less frustrated, but also I can help people within that system navigate it. So I often spend time coaching people a little bit, saying, okay, well, let's go this way, or let's go that way, or have you spoken to that person? So that really does help. And I think the corporates then trust me a little bit too, because I speak the language and I understand the processes and I know what's important to them. I can help deliver value for them too. So they trust me because of that. So it's been very, very useful.
And then I guess just to wrap things up, what are your tips for startups that want to work with businesses, whether it's larger corporations or smaller enterprises?
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing that's really important is make sure that you understand that business and what that business needs. So different businesses work in different ways. So as I said, we've learned large enterprises very much focused on mental health, focused on safety, those sorts of things. Smaller businesses are focused on lack of resources and how do they comply to what they need to comply to. So find out what that business actually needs and the value that you can. Secondly, what's the value that you deliver? So how is your product or your service delivering value to that business? And the third thing I would say that we've learned in the last couple of years, totally unexpected, but make the product easy and de-risk it. So by that I mean make it really easy for your customer to use. So take the risk away from it. So it can be something that someone can pick up, they can talk to their boss about, and it's a good thing for them to talk to their boss about. They feel confident, they feel comfortable, they want to use it. So if you understand what your company actually needs, deliver that value, and then make it really easy for the company to buy, that's a good starting point.
All right. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. But for people who are watching this session, Danielle will be participating in the Q&A towards the end of the program. So if you do have any questions, make sure to put it in the chat, and we'll make sure that we'll take note of that and add it to the list of audience questions for this session's Q&A. Again, thank you, Danielle, and we hope to see you later for the Q&A session.
Wonderful. Thanks, Eunice. I'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. See ya. Finally, to wrap up the first block of talks for our event, we'd like to call out a special speaker, this time talking from the VC perspective. John Sharp is a partner at Hatcher Plus, the leading data-driven venture capital investment firm. John has had extensive commercial experience at the senior management level, having been the chief executive officer of Authentium Incorporated, the managing director for Asia of WorldSpace, and the CEO of Hatcher, the precursor company to Hatcher Plus. A tenacious and driven executive with long-standing board level and C-suite level management experience within high-growth companies, John also brings with him a strong history of capital raising from an extensive network of investors globally. As chairman and CEO of cybersecurity pioneer Authentium, which was acquired by Siren in 2010, John co-authored 3 US patents and developed and sold cybersecurity solutions to some of the largest organizations in the world, which included the US Department of Commerce, NASA, AOL, British Telecom, Comcast, Google, McAfee, Microsoft, Symantec, and Telstra. As CTO at Hatcher Plus, DocDoc, Herdable, and ThoughtRiver, John has also designed and developed several highly innovative technology platforms using cutting edge approaches to data processing, user interface design, and workflow optimization. So here to talk to us about the VC perspective and how VCs view corporate startup engagements, and to share with us some of his experience working with startups around Asia Pacific and also around the world, is Mr. John Sharp. So let's all welcome John Sharp from Hatcher.
So once again, thanks everyone for inviting me to share some of what we're doing here and what we're planning to do in the Philippines. After about 10 years of working in venture capital, we've decided to take a slightly different approach to venture. And I'm just going to briefly go into why and explain why that's relevant to startups and also corporates, and in particular startups that are looking for money. We're going to talk a bit about that as well. Just a quick thing about how most companies invest today and work in the venture capital world. Most asset managers, meaning people that work in public equities or manage real estate, etc., they invest very systematically, and they use a lot of data and deep learning and a lot of and they is in a very scientific way. Most venture funds actually don't do that. They will find a bunch of startups, they'll invest in them, and they'll end up with 20 or 30 or 50 startups in a portfolio. And it generally takes a long, long time. And one of the things we've noticed from our first fund, we had made 20 investments in 30 companies in our first fund, is it took a long time to get money into the hands of founders. A founder would come and see us, and it would take sometimes 3 or 4 months for those things to close. And that's not really healthy for anybody. And so we wanted to really look and see if there was a better way we could find investments and that we could show process of getting money into the hands of founders. And so we came up with a new approach, and this new approach uses a lot of deep learning, process automation, and we use a very, very large global network of deal origination partners. And the objective for investors is really to create very predictable returns. But for startups, what we want to do is create a due diligence process and documentation that's much more suited to early stage startups that may be raising capital for the first or second time. So that's what we've done. We've reduced the time that's needed to go through diligence, go through the negotiations, and where we can get money into the hands of startups much faster and build a larger portfolio. The reason that we're building a larger portfolio is that we've done quite a large amount of work and quite a large amount of research. We've actually looked at about 600,000 venture transactions, which is pretty much everything that's happened in the last 20 years. And we've looked at 10-year returns for hundreds of funds, and we've built about 4 billion virtual VC portfolios. And the reason we did that is we wanted to understand what works, and what works from a startup perspective, but also what works from a venture capital perspective. And what we discovered is that if you invest in a large number of companies, like in our case, we're going to invest in over 1,000 companies, you can just get much more consistent returns. There's many small portfolios out there in the venture world, particularly with corporate VCs. And some of the reasons they fail is there's just not very many companies in there. So statistically, they don't really have a very large net. So if unicorns are happening 1 in every 100 venture-backed companies, which is what CB Insights believes happens, if you have only a 20-company portfolio, then obviously you have a 20% chance of a unicorn. If you have a 1,000-company portfolio, then you have 10 times 1, right? Or you have a much, much better chance of pulling a unicorn into your net. So that's what we're essentially doing. And we believe that if we take this approach, that we'll be able to consistently outperform a lot of the smaller portfolios. And you can see on the right-hand side here, this is a clustering of many of those simulations. And it just shows that many of the smaller portfolios really, really struggle to get the kind of returns that investors are looking for. So one question I always ask is, where's the best place to invest in a company? And I've got good news for both investors and startups, is that the best place to invest in a company is when it's started. And a lot of people avoid this place because they think it's risky. There's just so much unknown about the company. But actually, when you look at the data, you can make more money from investing in a very, very early stage company than you can from investing in a much later stage company. So we tend to invest in the first, third, and fourth rounds of a company, and then we hand it over to a later stage VC fund. Now, I just want to say a word here about accelerators, because obviously IdeaSpace and many other folks on the call here are working with accelerators. And what our research has shown is that the returns that are available to investors from accelerated companies are far superior to the returns available from traditional startups that don't go to accelerators. So I would encourage everyone that's looking at this broadcast to really think about applying to IdeaSpace and some of the other accelerators that you may know of in the Philippines, because an accelerator does help you find capital, and you'll leave that accelerator with a much better survival rate. You'll leave it with a much better sense of how to run your business, and you'll be much more capital efficient as well. And these are all big pluses for when it comes to finding capital. So that's what I'd leave you with in terms of this basic idea of what we've found in venture. We are investing with a whole bunch of accelerators around the world. We will look at around 40,000 deals next year, and we'll invest in around 300 of those deals. The best way to find us as a venture firm is through one of our accelerated partners, and we're talking with IdeaSpace currently to see if we can reach an agreement on a partnership so we can begin investing in the Philippines. So hopefully that's on board for 2021, and hopefully we'll be working together with IdeaSpace. So let me explain a bit how you can apply for funding. and how corporates are starting to use our platform to find new startups. This is the homepage for the venture capital arm for Coca-Cola Amatil in Australia. This is where an Asian startup can apply for funding. This is the same page for IdeaSpace.hatcher.com. And by clicking apply for funding here, this takes you to a registration page where you can add all your information, you can upload a video, and the IdeaSpace people can find you and can learn about your company and start looking at whether or not they'd like to invest in you. So Pioneer, one of the companies that you're going to hear about today, came through this system, and they came through an accelerator in Australia called Blue Chili, and they ended up in our deal flow, which is an industry term for the deals that come through your system here. And they ended up as one of our portfolio companies. Here they are there, along with these other portfolio companies. Now, as you can see, these are from all around the world: Sydney, San Francisco, Nashville, Mumbai, Milan, Jaipur, India, New York, Richmond, Manchester. The reason for our breadth is that we want to discover startups from all around the world. We don't think there's any particular advantage to just being in America or just being in Singapore. We think there's a massive advantage to being everywhere, including the Philippines, because this is how you find the next unicorns. This is how you find really, really smart people, by wrapping your arms around the world and finding those really smart companies. So what we do for each of these companies is, and we do this on behalf of our corporate investors, is we find out everything we can about the companies. We basically get them to fill out a form. We understand what they're doing in their fundraising activity. We look at their cap tables. We upload all the documentation that they may have into our data room. We put together information around the team, and we create these data profiles and an understanding of who's likely to acquire these guys at some point, who would likely to be investing in these guys. And we also do an analysis of where we think the company is heading. And that includes things like impact readiness, venture trending, return potential. And by the way, any score over 500 on our system is a positive score. The highest score I've ever seen is about 700. So 510 is a very good score. Most of the applications that we see are in the sort of 300 to 400 range. We're also keeping track of what Pioneer is doing online, and we keep ourselves updated on what the company is doing at all times. What we can then do for our corporate venture partners is, by aggregating lots of really good companies like Pioneer, we can actually create a situation where if they have a very specific that they're looking to do, they can go into our deal flow, into our deal database, and they can search thousands, tens of thousands, as it turns out, companies, and get very specific on what they're looking for. Now, here's a tip for startups. People can only find you if you're very specific about what you do and you describe yourself using specific terms. So you heard earlier Pioneer described as using AI, deep learning, machine learning, looking for early indicators of stress, human resources. These are all very good terms because they allow investors to find you, just like you can find something easier on Google if it's described well. So what I've done here is I've done a search based on bar, restaurant, nightclub, post-COVID revenue boost. And so what I'm looking for here, and I've created this long description here of what I'm looking for, and I've entered that into the system here. And what we've found here are a bunch of companies, in fact, 18,167 companies that are broadly in the business of providing services, products, ideas that can help build revenue at a bar or a restaurant during COVID. Why is this important? Because it's really important that bars and restaurants and everyone else get back into business. It's been a really tough year for some of those guys. So if we can introduce some of the corporates out there to some things that might really help, then we can, of course, play a role in helping people find new businesses and find new deals. So that's what we're doing. We're essentially putting corporates in line with a deal stream that could amount to around 30 to 40,000 deals next year. If you want to be in that deal stream, then apply to IdeaSpace. As I mentioned earlier, you will do better if you work with an accelerator. It's a great way to meet investors. It's a great way to learn how to build a business. And we thoroughly recommend that everyone in the Philippines contacts IdeaSpace or other accelerators and looks to take that path so that you can meet up with us and we can invest in you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, for that wonderful talk. So again, you just gotten a bit of an overview as to what VCs are starting to value now, and you'll get to ask more questions later on. But first, I'd like to introduce the speakers and the moderators for our fireside chat. So let's start with our moderator. Our moderator for this fireside chat is Mr. Andy Santos. Andy currently leads PLDT Enterprises Innovation Center, which focuses on R&D and new technologies that can better serve the ICT needs of the enterprise market. He also works to provide strategy to the Innovation Laboratory, or InnoLab, on how best to collaborate. Sorry, let me repeat that. He also provides strategy to the Innovation Laboratory, or InnoLab, on how best to collaborate with startups in bringing their solutions to the market, with a special focus on supporting PLDT's sustainability initiatives for both their internal and external programs. So joining Andy for this fireside chat is Jojo and John, but also Mr. Nathan Moyes. Nathan has over 20 years of experience in developing and managing teams and businesses across the product lifecycle. He has also worked and owned multiple businesses and is an accomplished people manager, developer, and leader with extensive change management experience. Currently, Nathan is the general manager at Virtual Business Partners. He is responsible for overseeing daily business activities, improving overall business functions, including finance and strategies, as well as communicating business goals. Virtual Business Partners is a platform for advisor firms to scale and to leverage their businesses. They embed talented people to improve back office operations, reduce costs, and improve task turnaround time. VBP is growing rapidly and has built their success on a foundation of amazing values and culture. So let's all welcome Mr. Andy Santos and our speakers for our first fireside chat, Mr. Nathan Moyes, Mr. John Sharp, and Mr. Jojo Hendrano.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Andy.
Jojo,
Morning.
John, Nathan. Good morning to you. Just to start off, how is everyone doing during this COVID-19 pandemic? Hopefully, you guys are safe.
Very safe here in Singapore. We're seeing a very, very smart operation here from the government, locking everyone down early, and it's been a perfect execution. I have to say, it's been really something to watch. As a kind of process-driven guy, I really admire what they've done. It's really good, and if they can keep it up for another 6 months, and then we can go into the vaccine, then perfect.
Good.
We're always at awe as to the things that Singapore is able to, to do and to accomplish in such a coordinated means. So, yeah. On my side, things are pretty well. So, PLDT is doing great overall in spite of the pandemic. So, challenges still remain, challenges still abound, but we're driven to really make a difference, especially with the enterprise community.
Nathan, how about you?
Well, I guess we started really uncertain what would happen. I think March, I walked into the CEO's office and suggested we had to send everybody home. And I think about 5 days later, we had 98% of the workforce working from home. So from one office in Cebu, we now have 610 offices across the Philippines, most of them in bedrooms and lounge rooms across the place, but everyone doing really well. And I think what we've seen is perhaps a shift that might have taken another 3 or 4 years before businesses started thinking about it has happened essentially in under 6 months. And so great new opportunities to think about how we grow and evolve our businesses and our people.
Okay, let me fire up my first question. I will address this to everyone. Given the current situation, how has the startups adapted? Are they doing better? Are they producing more solutions to address the current situation? Any takers?
I have some figures because we just finished doing an audit with PwC of 108 companies that we invested in last year. And before we started the audit, I was quite worried actually, because I had no idea really of how severe or not the COVID situation had been. And the figures that I'm very happy to present is we have ended up with less casualties than we would normally expect 1 year into an investment. We would normally have, of 110 odd companies, we would normally expect to see somewhere in the order of 15 to 20% drop off. We've seen about 12%, and only 3 companies that have been directly affected by COVID. So from our perspective, it's actually been the effect has been quite light, and but we've also talked with all of the accelerators that we work with, and we found that so many of them moved very, very quickly to virtual cohorts, virtual operations, Zoom, and so effectively. That was the thing that really surprised us. So even places, there's one group that we work with in Milan, Italy, that was particularly badly hit. They moved very quickly to virtual sessions and virtual coaching and mentoring, and very successfully. All of their companies have done well. So it's been a challenge, I think, for all of us. But somewhat surprisingly, it has not had the impact or the negative impact that we thought it might have. It's actually been okay.
I might add to that we saw probably in the first 2 to 3 months, lots of our network was experimenting with different ways of addressing solutions. Some of them, as John mentioned, in terms of using different channels and so on. It was almost like they were using it as a minimum viable product. And then somewhere around June, when the world realized this wasn't going to go away after 1 quarter, but was going to hang around for probably a year, I think we started to see some more significant investments and changes that were just a bit more polished, a bit more considered, and have certainly set up many of them for seeing themselves through to the end of the year. And probably accelerated their changes and their adoption to change. That's going to set them up well for certainly as we come out of any recessions, and position them for opportunities that come out of a post-pandemic world.
I don't have as an overarching view as John and Nathan would have, but would like to share observation that I'm pleasantly surprised with, say, certain startups that have started operations or were actually even formed during the pandemic. So we've seen a few cases where there's a particular e-logistics company, an e-commerce company, just trying to make a difference in their in areas, because there's definitely opportunities out there. If I may ask a question to John, to Nathan, and to Andy, like in terms of those that are thriving, is there like a specific type of a technology area or solution area that's been more prevalent or more successful coming into the pandemic that you've seen?
Maybe I'll go first. We invested in, we actually founded a payment gateway in Dubai in our first fund, and it's seen a massive increase in transaction volume and per transaction quantum. And so I think broadly speaking, the digital fintech companies have done very well. E-commerce, I know from my friends in Indonesia and in Malaysia that it's doing very well there. I'm not sure in Philippines, but I'm absolutely certain probably doing just fine. And so I think that there's been some real winners out of this situation. But broadly speaking, I think looking across the next 5 years, if I can just go there for a second, that the real winners have been investors and startups, because what's happened is the reduction in time necessary to approve things like a new form of fintech or a new therapeutic or whatever. These have gone from 5 years to 15 months to perhaps even less than that. So I think we're going to be able to create a lot more value as a result of this pandemic and the effect it's had on regulatory approvals in health tech and fintech.
The only thing I'd add to John's comment, Jojo, is that those organizations that already have a deep understanding of the problems they're solving, of the value exchange they create for their clients, those are the ones that are already in a stronger position. Because if you don't have those things clear, even in a more constructive environment, I think you'll still find it difficult to excel. So I think certainly there's been improved opportunity, but some of those calls about having a good business and good business sense and understanding where and how you're solving problems for clients and genuinely adding value. Those things have been really key for those that have succeeded. It's meant they've been more adaptable, more agile, or a lot of the things that we've talked about for the last 5 years about what we want from a good quality startup. It's done all those things. It's just compressed them into a microcosm of the last few months. I think the other space where we've seen some slight activities is local. And by that, I mean where organisations have certainly been able to do something that provided a solution in their immediate area, because sometimes they had difficulty getting beyond that. From some cafes that have suddenly done really well because everyone's working from home and they're around the corner and they used to be quiet because everybody went to the city, to organisations that have had to look at how they find local solutions, much as Export One were talking about earlier.
Very interesting insights. Thanks very much for that.
Probably to Jojo. You've mentioned earlier that digital transformation is happening everywhere, including PLDT and Smart. How can those startups play a role in that whole ecosystem, those end-to-end services that you were mentioning
Well,
earlier?
it's interesting because there's always a need, there's always a demand. There's so many business problems out there that need to be solved, right? And just dealing with startups, gives that nice breath of fresh air, fresh ideas as well into things that we can do better. Things. Sorry, my son's dropping my app. Things we can do better, things we can improve. Um, and maybe I'd just like to share from my perspective what we're looking for in startups that could help us moving forward, specific to how PLDT engages with customers, is um, just essential. It's harder in the Philippine context, I think, but I'm looking for startups that are willing to go into manufacturing. So sustainability has been one of the key themes in this pandemic, and being able to come up and design and manufacture their own goods, while very challenging in the Philippine context, is very interesting for me. So that's one type. The second part is those, just in general, startups that have put the necessary legwork to make an idea or a business model to be successful. So they need not be digital to start, but have necessarily pivoted to digital to solve a particular business need. So there was one particular hackathon where IdeaSpace invited me, and I had the pleasure of judging, where there was an IoT startup that focused just on an IoT-aided liquefied petroleum gas supply chain, because they have been in the LPG business for many years, but transformed themselves to be more digital, to employ the digital tools to have an edge in this space. So a lot of these solutions should help PLDT from both a corporate context, as we deal with the challenges of working from home, and also, essentially sustaining a good new age business model post pandemic.
Thank you, Joe. A question for Nathan. I heard you're stuck in Boracay.
Yeah.
What a place to be stuck in. And I also read that you started a business there way back. How is it doing? And
Yes,
probably to cap that question, what do you love about the Philippine startup scene, and how do you see us competing in APAC?
we started a business. It was before the pandemic, and the idea was a basket of fresh fruit and vegetables, restaurant quality, that you would subscribe to and have access to each week. And it was sort of solving a key problem, which was on the island, by the time you got to the local market, the restaurants had taken all the best quality produce. And so the only way to get decent fruit and vegetables was to go to a restaurant. And for those of us that lived on the island, it was a problem we wanted to solve. It worked well. When the pandemic hit, though, we struggled. And the reason was we lost a lot of the expat and longer-term tourist market, as those that lived here generally were looking at closures and decided they would take the various flights initiated by their governments back to Europe or back to Korea. Or back to Korea and China. I guess, though, that so it's still there. We're just sort of waiting for how do we pivot in the current world. And the way that's probably looking is that we would look at how we become a buying group to supply the very restaurants who we were competing with before, because we all have a common interest in locating and finding fresh food and vegetables. I guess my thoughts about the startup space in the Philippines is it's it's as robust and interested and challenged as anywhere else that I've worked. If I think about the space in Australia where I was before here, it was the same challenges around finding strong ideas, finding talent, choosing options in terms of the many things you might do. Having the resilience, as I think you were speaking about earlier, Jojo, to keep going even when things are difficult, to understand what's the changing landscape that you're working in. So I think many of those challenges are the same. What I found slightly more difficult was finding those connections where you would find like-minded people. And particularly if you're somewhere like Boracay, there isn't a large local scene you can join. And so what I've seen is that post the pandemic, there are more online services, events like this one that you can become involved in to speak with others going through the same challenges and learn from their experience and share your own. So I found that helps build that resilience, the strength to keep going when sometimes, as for any business, it gets very frustrating and you feel you're quite isolated and on your own. And not everybody has the pleasure I do of a nice beach out front to go and recharge myself on. So I think in many ways that a country of islands, a country of independent sort of locations will actually find the great benefits from all the digitization of the startup space and services and groups such as InnoLab from PLDT. It sounds like a great option for people to get involved and connect. And for IdeaSpace generally, I think it's a really positive phase and a great time for people to get into the startup space and start thinking about the ideas that they can solve.
Great. So the key word is resiliency, really, especially in these times.
Definitely.
I agree. Yep. John, a quick question for you. You shared to us a very interesting new approach, scientific approach in investing. I was about to ask earlier before you presented, which stage of the startup do you invest more in? So you said in the early stages, but what are those criterias? Would your new approach guide an investor into investing to which criterias are defined and are needed for each startups?
Sure. Look, a great question, right? I mean, it's one that's not easily deciphered, but it really comes down to team at the end of the day, doesn't it? I mean, because so many startups within 6 months or 12 months of starting a company, their idea has not panned out well. The market wasn't there that they thought it was. Maybe someone on the team leaves, and so they have to pivot and they have to go into a new direction. So they've got to completely change the flight plan. So what we tend to look for are people that are resilient. I love that word. And also are just capable, smart people that don't give up easily and are looking to solve genuine problems. What I tend to avoid in a startup is when someone walks into me and says, I'm looking for money. And I say, well, why do you, why are you here? Yeah, what do you want to do? And they say, well, I just love being in the startup community. Those are the people to avoid. I mean, I'm looking for someone that's passionate about solving a problem, coming up with some new form of making us healthier or smarter or educating us better or getting us from A to B quicker. I mean, at the end of the day, what we invest in is efficiencies, newer ways, better ways of doing things. And the people that get rewarded are the people that are genuinely curious to find a solution to that thing. It's not the people that are looking to get rich or to create a unicorn that succeed. It's the people that solve a problem in a better way, and that can be solved anywhere, right? You look at the leading vaccine now was created in Germany by a Turkish immigrant couple. Now that just proves that the nature of the world that we're living in is completely cross-border. Solutions can come from anywhere. But they all have the same kind of nature to them. To answer your question, Andy, and that is that you need to have there needs to be this commonality of personalities that are deeply curious, have lots of grit and capacity to to stay the course, because it's going to take a lot longer than they think. There's a great quote by Bill Gates where he says everyone always overestimates what they can do in 1 year and underestimates what they can do in 10. And startups of every single startup follows that line. They always think, oh, I can be $2 million in 2 years. Probably not. You probably might be able to build a decent customer base by then, but really things are going to take longer. So you've got to be prepared to be in this for the long haul.
Got it. Good insights. Probably a question for everyone. How do you see the corporate and startup collaboration in the near future? Are startups really needed by the corporate, or the other way around? Corporate needs the startups. How will it work in the future based on your insights? Nathan, you're on mute.
Yeah, I might jump first on that one. I think for corporates, and John was mentioning before that often they have quite small portfolios of venture capital. I think corporates struggle with the idea of creating a startup community where they're actively investing. I think they often step too late into the space, and when they do so, they discover that they've missed an opportunity, and they don't have the type of insights that have been discussed earlier today that might tell them they need more scale and they need more time in these spaces. But I think fundamentally it's important for corporates to be in that space, because it's the way to add diversity of thinking, particularly if the corporate is an older legacy business that's going through change and transformation. Without that sort of diversity of thinking internally, being driven by the startup ideation and communities and thinking, it's very difficult. Organizations that create ideas hubs, innovation labs, they're doing the right things to bring that knowledge inside, and they're doing the right things to make sure that they blend the very best of what they've got inside the building with that constantly evolving creative world outside. So that obviously creates a great opportunity for startups. I think the corporates, though, when they do dip their toe in, it's important they go in with their eyes open, that they understand that this isn't a PR exercise. It's not a way to create a fancy floor that looks good in the behind the reception and in the corporate brochures, but it's an active way to embed innovative thinking as part of their everyday business. So for me, it's an absolute they must, but I think they've really struggled to do it well.
If I can pick up on that, I think the most important thing corporates need to do, like a VC, that they need to make an allocation and say, well, I'm going to allocate $5 million, $10, $50 million, $1 million, whatever it is, that they need to go in there and make an allocation, and then they need to staff it. But I think they also need to have a very clear-eyed view of what they're doing. Are they outsourcing their R&D facility? Are they creating something that's designed to bring intellectual property in-house in the long term? And if they are, then they need to think very carefully about the kind of structures they're putting in place, and they need to be very transparent with the startups about what they're doing there. I think the other thing is they need to have access to deal flow. One of the things I see that happens with corporates is they set up, they think they've got a great brand, but they don't realize that the brand, unless it's known to be investing in venture, is not automatically going to act as this fantastic gravitational pull for startups, because startups may just not know that PLDT has inner labs and is attracting startups. And so unless they're also putting out those marketing dollars and letting people know, that can also make it problematic. But look, the corporates are investing more than ever. So even in COVID, like I think the numbers in Q2 were just 14% down on the previous year, which was a record year. So I think the corporates are generally still at the wheel and still investing and still investing as much as they ever have. So that's the good news for startups. But the only thing I would say that startups and corporates need to be very transparent with each other as to what they're getting from the relationship before they jump and get involved, because the corporates are not necessarily looking for financial returns as the top primary reason why they're putting capital from Treasury into startups. They're usually looking for some other thing, something they can put in their distribution channel, something that will enhance a particular offering that they already have. So it's very important that corporates and startups have this very clear understanding of why they're partnering with each other.
Thanks, Jan.
And I'd just like to add that not too long ago actually it would have been very difficult for PLDT to deal with the startup, and Andy and team had been working the last couple of years to ensure that we really open up, because that space is very important to us. And it's as mentioned, a lot of times PLDT and Smart also can benefit from what the startups can provide. Also, we're also a B2B organization, and we deal with a lot of other corporates, and sometimes we find ourselves in the situation where we would endorse a startup to another corporate. Rather than going through the productization motions of having it go through us, we can just essentially endorse and then co-build something together with a startup and another corporate. And we think specific to IoT, where there's really more that the use cases are so rich that usually 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 providers are not enough. We think our role will become a marketplace and an ecosystem builder, rather than pick a startup, nurture, continue, and then release, and then more transition to providing a platform, ensuring that the criteria there for startups to join into that platform or into that marketplace is something that would be startup friendly with certain controls, right? And we hope that should open things up more in the future.
But by the way, I must say that Jojo, if I was a startup and I was looking for a corporate to partner with, I'd partner with you. Because I had the experience in the States of partnering with Comcast and Cox and AOL and lots of the large cable and phone companies, and the reach that they have, but also the capacity they have to advertise a product and service. There's so many things to like about teaming up with the telco when you have a fresh new product that you need to get mass market awareness of. So that's just a tip to the startups watching this, that they probably should inundate Jojo with their business plans.
Please do so. One thing we're looking for is, we've set up, it was in one of my slides, is we need to be a curator of digital services. So for a startup out there, if you think your solution, say as part of the customer journey, someone would want connectivity, either fiber or wireless or even 5G, something that as part of the buying journey, they would add to cart your solution, to add into that, say, broadband service or that connectivity service, that data center, cloud, or cybersecurity service. If you see a natural affinity to bundle those solutions together, and via that same transaction, that's already a prime example of things that we are heavily looking for and looking to partner with.
Thank you, gentlemen, for those insights. Probably, I think Jojo mentioned those business models that we are doing with startups. John and Nathan, any other business models besides co-marketing, co-branding, partnerships? What other corporate startup business models are there?
It's always a mistake to think that you know what the corporate wants, I think, if you're a startup. And I'll give an example. When we started working with Coca-Cola Amatil, I was having a conversation with one of their executives, and they just put some money in our fund, which I was grateful for. And I said, so you're looking for new kinds of fizzy drinks, or in Indonesia, or you're looking for this or that, the other thing? They said, well, first of all, they don't drink fizzy drinks in Indonesia in great quantities. I said, okay, so I'm learning. And then they said, second of all, actually what we're really looking for are things that we can use our distribution channel for, to make our logistics and make our payment systems more effective. So I had it completely wrong when I was looking at them from the outside in. They were actually looking at ways that they could transact more easily, move things around more efficiently, and really they had a really concise, really excellent overview of what they wanted, of the kind of things that they wanted to invest in. And it wasn't to do with their sort of core IP, as it were, in terms of the drinks business. It was more to do with what was around it in terms of the logistics side of things. So I think when it comes to what corporates want to invest in, they're as likely to invest in a human resource solution or a logistics solution or a payment solution as they are a food and beverage solution if they're an F&B company at core. So I would just say that the breadth of what they may invest in is probably likely to be wider than you might think.
Thanks, John. Nathan?
I'd reiterate that. I think you'd find many of us approach a corporate thinking that the idea has to relate to the service they sell to their customers. And often it's about building that efficiency internally that they're looking for. The other one, similar to telco, is media, because they also can obviously get out messages very quickly to a large customer base. But they've also been through probably nearing 2 decades of change and transformation, consolidation, and it's in every market. And so often you find that what they're looking for is not necessarily just a digital version of their previous offering, but they're looking for sometimes quite different things. Whether it's the real estate market that's now a fully online digital proposition of listings versus what used to be a printout in the newspaper once a week. So there's all sorts of variations going on. I think the discussion earlier that it's about being as transparent and open with the corporates that you might be talking with, that's really critical to understand what it is they're looking for. And sometimes it's very in that conversation that they're evolving their thinking as well. So I think being part of the dialogue with them is really important, and that means that you can help them understand what problems they've got, what jobs they're trying to do, what journeys they're on, as well as their customers, and how you might add value to those by finding solutions for them.
Actually, if I can quickly pick up on that, that's an excellent point, Nathan. When we first approached Comcast with our little startup back in 2001, we were selling streaming video on the internet, and everyone we spoke to said, "Oh, that'll never happen." Video on the internet. And before we left the meeting, we asked a very sensible question. We said, "Well, what do you guys need?" And they said, "Look, what we really need desperately right now is personal firewall and home broadband security solutions." And so we lied through our teeth and said, "Well, we can supply that." And went out and found some solutions, came back, repackaged them a few weeks later. And before we knew it, we had a 9 million customer base that we could point a product at. So I think what Nathan's saying is absolutely great advice, in that you want to always be asking them asking the corporate what it needs, because it may not be exactly what you're offering, but you may be able to be resourceful enough to turn that into a business.
I think we have the last 10 minutes, probably for all the gentlemen. What tips can you give to our startups besides being resilient and of course partnering with PLDT? What else are there to look after?
I can maybe tell you what we look for when we're so we've built a deep learning based application processing engine so when someone applies to one of our partner programs around the world, we're looking for certain things. And one of the things that I would greatly advise startups to do is to be very specific about what their capabilities are. And we're forever seeing people say, "We have this amazing product that's getting awesome traction and it's going to change the world." None of those words are going to make it into a deep learning algorithm and create any kind of positive score on the other side. Whereas if instead you say, "We have a medical device startup that has 20 patents and 2 MOUs with Johnson & Johnson and Medtronic," every single piece of information that I just spoke about there is going to end up in a score and is going to end up in assessment. And by the way, anyone who walks in with that kind of pitch automatically gets time with us. So it's really about making your pitch the best that it can be based on factual information. Don't exaggerate, just say what you've done. And my other advice to startups would be yourself. I think people like investing in people that are honest and transparent and open. And nothing I like more in a meeting is when they say, look, what competitors do you have? And people say, "Well, we've exhaustively researched it, and here are 20 guys that are in the same space, and here's how we're different." But if I say, "What competitors do you have?" and you say, "Well, we don't have any," and then I can quickly go and Google on my mobile phone and find out that you have 20, that's not going to be a good meeting. So I just would ask every startup to please do their research, understand where they fit in the market, be very clear as to why they're attacking that market, how they're different, how they can expect success to happen. And then you have to understand that as venture guys, we want you to go 100x. We need a handful of companies to do our portfolio. So if you want to get capital, you have to have the kind of business that can create that kind of return. There's so many great businesses out there that are fast food franchises and gas stations and lumber yards. They're fantastic businesses. I use them all the time. I'm a customer, but they're not venture backable. So you need to understand that you have to be operating a business that can grow from 1 to 100 in the space of 5 years. And if it can, then we'll all be like super excited, and you'll probably get a pretty good audience with most of the VCs that are out there.
Right.
Thanks, John.
So I'll go
Nathan?
next. I think we've talked earlier about making sure you understand the problem you're solving, rather than having a solution that's looking for a problem as your opening starting point. I think often it's tempting to keep chasing your original idea without then putting it in front of customers and getting feedback. And if you do that, what happens is you may have started with a genuine solution to a problem and a known problem, but you've got too myopic, too blinkered, and you're unable to see that the customer's need or problem is actually slightly more subtle or more complex. I think you've got it right when you find that you're solving the shortcuts or quick fixes that people are trying to do. They tend to be good signifiers that there's a genuine problem there to go and unpack and fix for them. You'll also know you found it when there's a genuine exchange. And in that example, they're going to pay you with either money, obviously, loyalty, data, or referral. You need some sort of return on your investment from solving the problem. And I certainly think that those 4 different things, and there may be some others depending on your business, each one's going to be, you need to look for that. If there's not that sort of return coming to you, then you probably haven't got the balance quite right. The other thing to think about is there's a myriad of decisions to make in your business, and at the startup phase, many of them are the first time you've confronted them, and therefore you have to make sure you're doing them with the right sort of insights. And you don't always have the research that you might want. But I sort of think that there's generally, on most initiatives or most activities, a time constraint, a quality constraint, a resource or investment constraint, and a feature or complexity constraint. And if you imagine each of those are a lever, we can sort of set some of them, and others we can manipulate. So if you have certain time and you want a high quality product, and you have a limited amount of investment, then you need to be able to say, well, you've got to make it really simple, reduce the number of features. You've got to do something that lets you still deliver that within, if you like, the physics of building a product. Because if you don't stay within those boundaries, you're just fooling yourself, and you won't hit the deadline, you won't have the quality, or you won't have the right feature. And I think the last thing to think about is really the people, sort of who you surround yourself with. I've always been in the startup space, often alongside the person who had that first idea. And I thoroughly enjoy that. I feel I'm a creative person at times, but my creativity is honed in helping people with great ideas do great things with them. And I know that I need to work with that type of person. And the sort of people that are often in a startup space may be great with ideas, but not so great with execution. They need to look at who's in the business with them. You know, how are they going to bring it together to make sure that they get to the outcomes they want, that they have enough diversity in the way they do it, both in terms of experience and background and skills, because you need that anyway to get the job done. But also through that diversity, you build the resilience that we talked about earlier. And through that, you then are able to adapt. You're able to have ideas on the table that you otherwise, you might have got to, but they might have taken you 3 or 4 weeks that you didn't have. And so I think that last thing is really critical. It's like, who is your team, both in the business, but then also who are the partners you're dealing with, and how is that relationship? Because they're part of your meta team, if you like, of the broader group that you work with. So I think definitely coming back to making sure you're solving a problem, that it's a genuine value exchange, that you're realistic about your features, your quality, your investment, and your timeline, and you've got a focus on good people. I think that, to me, that's the magic sauce that makes it work.
Just to add and just to echo certain things also, so a couple of things come to mind. technology is only one part of the puzzle. So business fit, business model, sustainability angles should always be looked into. Startup should always do a sensitivity check and research what else is out there. To to John's point, it's also important to take a multi-industry view whenever possible, as more use cases could be there to make the business case more feasible that you may not see if you're focusing on one particular industry, like on like on retail. I think there's also opportunities by understanding the regulatory landscape, especially in areas such as data privacy and data protection, when there's so much harshness, I'll be blunt, to how it's written. But at the same time, it has to be there because we have to protect the data of, the personal data of our precious data subjects, including ourselves. But there's an evolving area for competitive advantage to be done there if you understand the laws, what you can do, what you cannot do, and you're essentially at the forefront of already doing certain things better than others, right? And the last is, as echoed, team is important. So there's always a mix of certain people in a team. You need a good balanced person, you need a good marketer, you need a good idea generator, you need just having a mix of certain personas within the team. I agree, would make things much easier.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, just to echo your point there, Jojo, I think the best summation of a team I ever heard was the optimist, the pessimist, and the engineer. You have to have the sales guy. You got to have the guy that's really focused on project management, getting the trains online, and you've got to have the guy that can create the IP in the first
There you
place.
go.
And if you have a team, you'll certainly get it. You'll get. You will find people who will be interested in you. A single person, by the way, a single founder is rarely a good investment. And if you look at most successful people, even people like Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates or what out there, there's usually a second guy in the mix that's doing a lot more than they may be given credit for.
Thank you, guys. Great insights. So I learned a lot. Resiliency, teamwork, being truthful and factual, John. And of course, knowing when to pivot. Exactly the words we want to hear. So I think we need to wrap up. Thank you, guys. And see you later.
Thank you,
Take
Andy.
care.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks very
Thank
much,
you.
gentlemen. Enjoy this.
Thank you.
All right, we've had a wonderful set of discussions for this session. So, for our next block, we would like to talk about the present and future of collaborations for startups. This block will feature talks from a multilateral organization and from a government agency, highlighting activities and initiatives to help develop the Philippines' digital economy.
Hi everyone, my name is Cecilia. I'm an advisor on innovation and entrepreneurship at UNICEF in the New York City headquarters. And today I'd like to tell you about one of the very exciting projects I had the pleasure to work on. A project that resulted in the investment of 5 startups in the Philippines. But before I get ahead of myself, I wanted to start with the basics. UNICEF. You probably heard about us, or I hope. We're a United Nations agency focusing on supporting the care, the development, and the growth of children around the world, but especially in the countries with the most needs. But something you may not have heard of is about a small yet very impactful and disruptive team within UNICEF called UNICEF Innovation. That's the team I work at. And what we do in this team is identify emerging technologies with great potential to improve the lives of children. And we do that by investing in applications of these technologies, either internally through the creation of internal prototypes within UNICEF, or externally through the investment in startups that are using these emerging technologies for humanitarian purposes. That brings me to UNICEF's Venture Fund, a fund that we use to make these investments, both internally and externally. UNICEF's Venture Fund is a 30 million pooled funding vehicle that invests in early stage open source emerging technology solutions with the potential to impact children on a global scale. It is the first financial vehicle of that kind in the United Nations, really. So it very much enabled us for the last 5 years. It enabled UNICEF to learn from and really shape markets of emerging technology, and especially consider the applications on humanitarian purposes. During the next 10 minutes, you'll hear me talk a lot about emerging frontier technology. So before I continue, I wanted to explain how exactly do we define emerging technologies? What do I mean? At UNICEF, we define emerging technologies as those that exist at the intersection of $100 billion markets and 1 billion people needs. What that means is essentially solutions that overlap between financially sustainable industries and the ability to impact a lot of people. This is with the purpose of positively impact the lives of millions. So UNICEF's venture fund. The fund invests in, as I said, early stage solutions that have a working prototype with some initial data that allows us to see some initial results. The core motivation of the Innovation Fund is to really identify clusters or portfolios of initiatives around emerging technologies, to connect them, share data within them, and very much combine them to create scalable platforms of digital public goods, so goods available to everyone. And if you're a startup, you may be wondering, how do you get eligible for this kind of funding? So to start off, the funding is only available to private companies in developing or emerging countries where UNICEF is present, just like the Philippines. And we open applications on a rolling basis. If you follow us on social media, you'll see every time we open a new application process. But an interesting thing is we assess the applications in 4 different levels. 1, problem solution fit. Do you know the problem that you're addressing? And is the solution you're proposing fit that problem? Is the technology application fit that solution? 2nd, strength of the team. Is your team diverse? Is it using different skills from different contexts, different genders? Is it based on a local team that knows that problem? 3rd, the technical viability of your product. You must have a big mission, but are you able to show us a prototype of that big mission to be able to succeed? Do you have some user experience, some user interaction that shows some data of that prototyping? And 4th, business plan. Do you have an idea of a financially sustainable way to make that solution grow? So once you're selected, you receive 1 year of support with product and technology assistance from UNICEF, support with business growth, access to a network of experts, access to partners, a lot of support essentially to grow from a prototype stage into a minimum viable product. And after that 1 year of extensive support, there's a lot of opportunities that we try to facilitate, from additional funding through a growth fund, from crypto funding through our crypto fund, or through connections with external investors or external partners that want to support the continuing growth of your solution. To date, we've made more than 100 investments in 57 countries. And this background very much helps me get to where I really wanted to get today, which is how do we scale this impact after everything we've done? We've done so much of this work, prototype, proven these applications, the impact of emerging technologies for humanitarian purposes. Where do we go from here? And one answer I wanted to share is partnerships. We realized that to scale our work, we need to work with like-minded organizations that share our vision and complement our work in a way that we can increase our impact. And that is how last year, ING, a financial services global company, and UNICEF united their efforts to launch a pilot initiative in the Philippines to explore investing and mentoring startups that are building financial technology solutions or fintech solutions that will positively impact young people, children and families in the Philippines. You see, ING and UNICEF have been working together for more than 10 years, but today in the Philippines, we both identified a need that we decided to get together to address. In the Philippines, more than 1/3 of all children, this is over 9 million children, live below the poverty line. As a result, they not only suffer from poor health, malnutrition, but also reduced options in the long term without the ability to afford and access education, training, work, or entrepreneurial opportunities as opportunities in general. So where does fintech come in here? You see, fintech refers to technology-enabled innovations in financial services, meaning new digital financial tools that, if designed to address the users that need them the most, help build economic security, encourage more equitable access to services, and lift the financial barriers to opportunities. Facing this need, ING and UNICEF in 2019, last year, decided to get together to identify 5 fintech solutions in the Philippines that offer even the most disadvantaged youth and families possibilities for a better stability and economic opportunity. This is especially important now, as health systems have buckled, borders have been closed, families have been struggling to stay afloat as a result, really, of the coronavirus pandemic. The potential long-term negative consequences for children have expanded and increased. As the world starts thinking about how to build back its systems after the pandemic, these kinds of investments in fintech for the most impacted communities present us a critical challenge, but also a critical opportunity. After a very strong sourcing effort from my team and the support of ING and UNICEF have identified 5 Filipino startups that will be receiving equity-free funding investments from up to $100,000, as well as really invaluable technical and business mentorship from UNICEF, from ING, from IdeaSpace, and other experts over a 12-month period. This mentorship and targeted expertise is intended to help these companies build their open source solution, grow their businesses, test with more users, and make essentially a greater social impact in the country. All these startups are registered in the Philippines and have a working prototype of their new fintech solution. We will support them to make improvements on this solution, from testing with a new user group to incorporating a new element into the existing solution, or to maybe iterating and building a new solution altogether that will be more impactful. So I very much invite you to go into our website. You can look at it in the conference details, but it's fintechforimpact.com. To learn more about the 5 grantees and what the partners involved in this initiative will be supporting them with over the incubation period. But also learn more about what we do in case you want to join these efforts. If the pandemic showed us anything, is that to address these local and global challenges, we need to work together. Entrepreneurs, civil society organizations, for-profit companies, international organizations, government, and many more. The project I told you about, this is one of the projects that UNICEF led. But that would never have been possible without ING, without IdeaSpace, without the entrepreneurs, and many of the partners that are facilitating the impact we want to scale. So if you want to think if you want to remember one thing about this small brief talk, is that partnerships are important, and to do some introspection and think, how can you, from the knowledge that you have, from the place that you have in society, how can you strengthen your efforts and make a greater positive social impact by partnering with someone else? Whether you're an entrepreneur, partnering with someone that can scale your vision, whether you're, again, as UNICEF, partnering with the private sector. So different types of organizations that, because they come from different places, they complement each other. So if this pandemic showed us something, is again that we need to work together to create the new world, the new inclusive and equitable world we want to live in. So I invite you to contribute to this effort, to many other efforts that are existing today in the Philippines and in the world, to redefine and rebuild the world we need to have to continue growing and integrating. Thank you so much for listening, and any questions, we're very, very happy to receive them through our website. Thank you very much.
Our next representative is from the Philippine government, who will talk about how she and her team are working to digitize one of the country's key industries, agriculture. Ms. Antonieta J. Arceo is the Division Chief of the Information Services Division of the Department of Agriculture's Training and Extension arm, the Agricultural Training Institute. She leads the implementation of an information and communication technology based program called the Electronic Extension Program for Agriculture and Fisheries, where they offer e learning and provide farm and business advisory services through the Farmers Contact Center. She's also the national coordinator for the Farmers and Information Technology Services Centers in the local government units. Likewise, she leads the implementation of various extension programs in partnership with private organizations such as the International Rice Research Institute and Smart Communications Incorporated. She holds a master's degree in development management from the Development Academy of the Philippines with highest honors. She also earned her Bachelor of Science in Development Communication from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. So let's all welcome Ms. Niet Arceo.
I'll be sharing to you our efforts in the Department of Agriculture in terms of our implementation of some digital agriculture programs specific for extension. Extension, per government parlance, works in 4 areas: training, information dissemination, provision of technical assistance, and demonstrating agriculture technologies. And in all of these areas, we have shifted or included ICTs because we in the government believes that we can streamline processes and make information and knowledge more accessible. I will be sharing with you today 3 of our digital agri programs at the Department of Agriculture, what problems we have encountered, and the lessons that we have learned. Let us start with the e-extension program for agriculture and fisheries. We started this program in 2007 because there was a demand for it. Our clients or customers have been clamoring for training programs that they can access anytime. Training programs that are available, not just for a few, but for all those who are interested in agriculture. This was the clamor since our network of 16 regional training centers nationwide has already predetermined training programs usually at the start of the year, and has limited slots for training since we usually do face-to-face trainings. Hence, as a training institute, we have to evolve, and at that time, e-learning is still not a trend, unlike today. In 2007, when we were talking about synchronous, asynchronous, and blended mode of learning, we still have to painstakingly explain it, unlike now, where these terms are already being understood even by elementary pupils. Hence today, we are already offering 66 free online courses. Here are some of the topics that are available in crops, livestock, marine and fisheries, social technology, and sustainable agriculture. 23 of these courses are related to urban agriculture. And yes, because of the pandemic, our #1 course today with most enrollees and graduates is related to urban agriculture. We have already produced more than 100,000 graduates already, most of whom are students and agriculture extension workers and farmer leaders. And at the time of the pandemic, we have a surge of enrollees with around 4,000 to 5,000 connections per day. Because of the pandemic, we have been offering also webinars through our social media account and the accounts of our training centers nationwide. Again, there was a demand for us to do so, and we have to evolve so that we would become relevant at this time. Our face-to-face training programs were affected because of the several restrictions during the pandemic, and this includes mobility and gathering of big number of people. Hence, we have to adjust. Now, we are offering at least once a week webinar related to urban gardening and producing your own food. Agriculture, especially food production at the household level, is more appreciated because people realize that we need food to survive. We need accessible and affordable food, and we can do that in our own homes. Likewise, under e-extension program, we also have the e-farming through the Farm Business Advisory Services via the Farmers Contact Center. The FCC, as we call it, serves as an advisory service of the Institute. We answer queries from our clients through a system, and we also do text broadcast on various techno tips on agriculture or weather advisory to guide our farmers. Then the second program that we are implementing with the International Rice Research Institute, a non-government organization, is the Rice Crop Manager Advisory Services. Rice grows in diverse environments and production systems vary within small distances. Producing rice in the Philippines is through smallholder farmers. Hence, the challenge of producing rice through best adapted varieties and best practices differ among fields and farmers. However, IRRI has seen this as an opportunity that yes, through a system and a platform, we can provide farmers with information personalized for their specific farming recommendation, with the end goal of increasing income for farmers, increasing productivity because they only apply the correct amount of fertilizer at the right time, and increasing yield and reach more farmers with extension services. This is how the RCM works. No? Through the field interviews through an extension worker using a laptop with an internet or a smartphone with a set of questions, the answers go to a database where it is processed and printed recommendation is given to the farmer. If he is amenable to receive notifications, he or she will receive these reminders when he will fertilize and how much or the rate of fertilization. Through the RCM Advisory Service came our first partnership with Smart Communications when we were testing the use of smartphones as well as a system of reminding among our farmers in Pampanga. The third digital agri program that we are implementing is the Digital Farmers Program. This is again in partnership with Smart Communications. When we talk of the Digital Farmers Program or the DFP, we always say that this is not a product. We are not selling the product of Smart. This is not a service like the FCC or the Farmers Contact Center. This is not even an application like the Rice Crop Manager, and this is not a platform like the e-learning. Instead, this is a learning experience, a journey for our farmers and the youth towards learning digital agriculture. This is a series of foundational activities. This is a series of foundational activities to a digital farming ecosystem. We have applied all the learnings that we got in implementing all the first programs I mentioned, where we focused on the product, on the application, and the platform. Here in DFP, we concentrated on building their capacities so that they will appreciate the use of modern technology and eventually embrace it, making them digital farmers, or what we call them, DG farmers. In DFP, we are big on partnership and collaboration. Smart communications with ATI as well as with the local government units, and eventually we will be bringing in farmers associations and cooperatives. We emphasized on the ladderized and co-learning approach of building capacities. Our aging farmers are partnered with the youth, be it their sons, daughters, or any young member of the family or the community. It is a co-learning approach because when the trainers are already finished with the training, our farmers will be able to ask questions from their kin. Maybe they will have follow-up sessions given the modules that we provide them. And by the way, this is also in answer to one of the pressing problems of agriculture today. Aging farmers whose average age is 57 years old, and the youth lacks interest in agriculture because according to their parents, there is no money in agriculture and it is a back-breaking job. Hence, with DFP, We will be able to entice the youth to appreciate agriculture and go into agriculture into an agri-enterprise, and are all to embrace the technology, making them future-ready farmers or agri-entrepreneurs. This is how we do our DFP sessions. We start with the basics, the Smart 101, accessing the internet safety and security, basic agriculture applications like weather apps, no, which is needed by the farmers, or a measurement app for their field. And we also included in introduction to social media marketing. Then the next step of the ladder is the DFP 102. 102 talks about advanced agriculture applications, introduction to PayMaya, since Smart is our partner, advanced social media marketing, e-commerce platforms, and of course, 103 will be financial literacy, credit, entrepreneurship, and smart farming. If you notice, the learner's journey under the DFP is that it is heavy in terms of building the capacities of our agri-entrepreneurs, because most of our modules have topics on entrepreneurship and financial literacy. Based on the implementation of the digital agri programs, we have encountered some problems and issues, as well as lessons learned, which I really would like to share to you. Okay, so one of the issues that we have encountered are client factors in terms of educational level of our farmers. Most of our smallholder farmers are elementary graduates. They are technology averse, no, and passive in the use of these technologies. Our extension workers, on the other hand, need to reach out to their farmers in their areas, but they do not have the access, no, to the internet, or they lack the resources to do so. Then in logistics, all related resources in terms of procurement of facilities, especially with us in the government. The high cost of the internet, though we always say that relatively this has gone down already, no, compared before when we were starting out with the e-learning in 2007. And the absence of electricity, telephone, or internet access in the rural areas. These are the realities in the field, especially among our farmers in the communities. The third problem in terms of is in terms of delivery, and this is in the context of language barrier. Hence, we have webinars which is done in the dialect for our Visayan-speaking audience. There's also the problem of translations in the local dialects. They are done, but it takes a longer time to upload the local versions, and it would entail a new set of talents. Also, the short messaging mechanism are not too user-friendly, especially if the system uses syntax. No? We did away with this problem in our FCC because one of the realities in the field is that the farmers still prefer, no, to talk to a person and not to a machine. Fourth is the support mechanism from government, both at the national and the local levels. You may say that we are already at the national government. We are already at the national level. Hence, it would be easier for us to implement programs like this. However, it's not, no, to tell you, it's really not, no. Our LGUs have different priorities and different agenda that come to play. There is also the need to have an appropriate policy environment to attract the private sector to put up ICT-related infrastructure, hence the need to ease up processes and systems in doing business. Lastly, in terms of partnership, indeed, no, the challenge to reckon with is when partners start becoming disinterested and becomes inactive. Lucky for us at the Agricultural Training Institute, Smart Communications through their Public Affairs program has been in active partnership since the Rice Crop Manager years. And there's also that issue of duplication of efforts that is true, especially when there are more government agencies involved. With all of these issues and problems, we have learned lessons as we implement the digital agri-related programs. Implementing digital agri programs is always something fresh. Hence, the eagerness among our clients or among our customers to learn. There's always that curiosity among them on what it is and how it works. The challenge then is how to sustain it given the resources that we have as well as their own resources to use. Likewise, it has opened the gates for a more vibrant extension delivery system that can modernize agriculture and fisheries, as well as the implementation of the RCM has brought a new way of providing extension services, as well as in the e-learning platform, our webinars, and the Farmers Contact Center. Indeed, extension can be delivered through various modes, not only through face-to-face interactions or farmer visits, given the reality in the field that there's only one extension worker in 5 or more barangays. There is also a need to tap the youth. No? They may serve as intermediaries for their farmer parents or the aging farmers in the household and the communities. Through this, they will be engaged and they will appreciate agriculture, and hopefully they will be inspired to become agri-entrepreneurs. Another lesson that is that in e-learning, no, our e-learning courses do not have to respond to the needs of the extension workers and farmers alone. There is also that demand now coming from our overseas Filipino workers and retirees wishing to go into farming. Hence, most of them are interested to enroll in our various e-learning courses. Likewise, interactive formats are less boring and have greater appeal among learners of all types, especially since we at the Agricultural Training Institute is dealing with adult learners. Another lesson under the public-private partnership is that it has the potential of enabling government to increase public infrastructure or public service. It also brings about indispensable pooling of resources and competencies. We just need to identify what are the available resources from both parties and the commitment to deliver. No. Yes, partnership may not always work exactly as planned. Hence, there is a need for a lead organization that pushes partnership building process forward. This is true if there are more than 2 organizations that are involved in a project like the implementation of the rice crop manager. IRI served as the lead agency, pushing us as well as partners from the various agencies and offices of the Department of Agriculture. There is also a need for clear roles and responsibilities, and this is being done through a memorandum of agreement or a memorandum of understanding. It is also necessary that private partners should also understand government systems and processes. Like, for example, our budget for the next year is already identified and deliberated within the agencies on the first month of the current year. Our 2021 budget was prepared at the agency level starting January 2020, which takes a long process of consultation and deliberations prior to being approved by our lawmakers, usually at the end of the year. Hence, activities and corresponding fund allocation is prepared very early. So at this point, our targets, specifically, for example, for the Digital Farmers Program, is already laid out for 2021. Hence, in all of those experiences, we can say that ICT-based initiatives are not easy to repeat elsewhere, each to its own context and landscape, especially if we are dealing with various organizations, local government units, and national agencies. Yes, it is also applicable to many problems in the agriculture sector. However, there is a study conducted by the Asian Institute of Management that says that agriculture is one of those vulnerable and the most affected in the fourth industrial revolution. But we know that we can cope and adapt given the resources and the needed knowledge and skills. We were able to cope and adapt during the pandemic. Still, no, marketing and logistics are challenges in the sector, which we hope can be addressed by digital agriculture. Our partners from Smart Communications have seen this when they went and talked to the farmers in the field when we were starting the DFP. One of the best quesong puti and dairy milk is being produced in Magdalena, Laguna. Then some women are also processing Spanish sardines somewhere in Misamis Occidental. One of the best salad dressings is being done by Alomas Garden in Bukidnon. And then there's the calabash wine and juice produced by Vanida Farms in Lanao del Norte. The problem, these do not reach a wider market. Yes, it's a long way to go, but we know that we can because through digital agriculture, it is fast becoming a vital engine of growth for the world today. Hence, in this context of this ICT-driven development, the people are still the center of all development. That's why we have the Digital Farmers Program. We go back to the basics, his needs, his priorities in life, and his dreams that will dictate the substance and manners by which interventions must reach him. So hopefully with all of these programs in partnership with the private sector, we will be able to meet, no, or capacitate our farmers to become digi farmers, no, as we call them. So I think that's all. No, thank you and have a great day.